The gender confusion delusion. Let's get dialed in. Hello and welcome to the show that still makes sense. Now, here's a question. When did it become controversial to believe in basic biology? You know, the same biology that's been around since the dawn of time. Apparently, in 2025, saying men are men, women are women is considered more dangerous than juggling chainsaws at a preschool. And here's the crazy part. The people telling us that we're bigots for wanting a little sanity aren't just loud, they're organized. They've got hashtags, TikTok influencers, and of course, a few $billion in Big Pharma's back pocket. But what do they not have? Well, common sense. And as it turns out, a plan that actually helps kids struggling with gender distress. But tonight, we've got someone who does. Enter Pamela Garfield Yeager, a mental health professional who's not afraid to point out the obvious. For years, Pamela's been working with kids and families, and here's what she's discovered. Gender confusion isn't something you fix with a scalpel or a cocktail of hormones. It's something you address with care, empathy, and, wait for it, actual mental health support. How radical. Now, let's take a step back and ask ourselves, when did it become normal for kids to make life-altering decisions before they're old enough to drive? You can't vote at 12. You can't get a tattoo at 14. But somehow, signing up for puberty blockers is a perfectly reasonable choice. You don't even need a permission slip. Folks, if this doesn't sound insane to you, I'm going to guess you're either not paying attention or you work at MSNBC. And here's where Pamela comes in. Her book, A Practical Response to Gender Distress, isn't just a guide, it's a lifeline. It's about giving parents the tools they need to help their kids through one of the toughest challenges they'll face without bowing to the cultural mob. So, what's her secret? Why does this woman, who has spent her entire career helping people, suddenly find herself the target of activists who think social media likes are the same thing as morality? And more importantly, how do we push back against this madness and start putting kids' well-being first again? Pamela Garfield Yeager is here tonight to answer all of that and more. Trust me, folks, you're not going to want to miss this because it's conversations like this one that might just save the next generation from the worst ideas of ours. And joining us now to help slice through the propaganda is licensed clinical social worker Pamela Garfield Yeager. Pamela, welcome to Texas Talkin'.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on. I want to talk tonight a little bit about the book that you've written. And if you could share with our viewers, what's the basic case that you make in this book?
Well, I wrote this book. It's called A Practical Response to Gender Distress. And it's a book really, it was originally written for parents to help them understand what is going on with their teenager if their teenager announces to the family that they are now transgender. To understand what is going on, what is behind this, what possibly influenced their child, and what are some ways they could talk to their child about this topic.
And what did you find?
Oh, so yeah, what did I find? What I found is I have this chapter, it's called Why Are the Kids Doing This? And really there are so many influences and there are so many underlying issues. So my philosophy is trans is not some inherent inborn quality. What it is a symptom of some other issue, whether it be that person struggling with mental health issues, someone who's autistic who has struggled socially, someone who has trauma, trying to find a way to fix their pain or fit in with others. And then they find, usually online, this magic pill, this magic solution that if they're trans and if they go along with all of the trans treatments and all of the the lingo and the culture that they'll feel better. And usually they do for quite a while because it feels good, it's for people to say you're wonderful and you're brave and stunning to be trans. And then they learn also those that just have questions are their enemy now. So that becomes a rift in the family. So I talk all about all of this in the book, to help parents understand what is happening with their child.
So these pills that they typically find online, I'm assuming you're referring to hormone blockers or some kind of puberty blockers, or what exactly are these children being exposed to?
Well, you can get all this stuff on the internet, but what I was actually referring to is just the messaging, just the
Oh, okay.
ideas.
A proverbial pill then.
Yeah, did I say pill? I don't know. The message. I'm not sure what I said. But they're getting that message. But you can get pills online. There are agencies now that are set up to basically mail order these hormones. I don't know if you can get puberty blockers. So the really young ones, they can't get it. That's usually, unfortunately, a parent who believes that they're going to help their child by transing them. Usually the parent is the one that has the issues in that case. It gets complicated. But with the teenagers who are off doing it on their own, they can, depending on what state, they can go to Planned Parenthood if they're under 18. Um, Not in Texas, happily, but other states they can. Even kids in Texas, they're not safe because they can, yes, order things online, or there are these sanctuary states. So California, the state that I recently escaped from, they have this law where they're a sanctuary state. So children, youth, I believe it's 12 and up, can go to California and become a ward of the state and go get hormones and surgeries under the on taxpayer dollars.
You brought up a minute ago what I thought was a very important point, and that is the prevalence of comorbidity. And for our viewers who don't know what that is, in other words, these gender confused teens, how often is the gender dysphoria coexisting with another psychiatric or psychological disorder? What would you estimate as the percentage? Or maybe you know the exact percentage.
I mean, I haven't done a study myself, but if I had to make a guess, I would say 100%. Every single one. And if you look even in the pro trans websites, they also say that that's how they have so much leverage, because these are kids that do have a lot of mental health issues. So a lot of the parents are scared because these are kids that have had a suicide attempt in the past, or have some mental instability, or they're coming from a broken family or from trauma, so that they are struggling mentally for real, right? They're not just pretending on TikTok, which I think a lot of people dismiss mental health issues. They're really struggling. So here we have this vulnerable population, and then they're groomed online usually, and then reinforced in school or in the therapy practice, because therapists are trained to affirm. I'm an outlier in this. All these other adults, coaches, teachers, they all affirm. And so then it's reinforced. But it starts out with a vulnerable child who's struggling with something and wants to fix the pain or the discomfort, or wants to fit in, or is struggling at home, neglected at home, emotionally, excuse me, all kinds of issues like that.
Now, and this affirmation, right? When therapists basically say, if you're a man who thinks you're a woman, let's affirm that, let's reinforce that idea, what I would call a delusion. It's sort of insane to me because it's compartmentalized. I don't think, at least to my knowledge, that if somebody went in to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist to be treated for schizophrenia, or even, in rare cases, multiple personality disorder, which I think it's called dissociative identity disorder now, that therapist, that psychologist or psychiatrist would not say, well, let's indulge these schizophrenic delusions, these auditory hallucinations, or these visual hallucinations. They would treat the disorder, right?
Right. And the way they get around that, the activists or the people who really believe in this ideology and really a religious belief, they wouldn't see it as a disorder. So you and I see this as a problem. Anybody with common sense would see it's a problem when you need hormones and surgeries to fix something that makes you so uncomfortable that you want to kill yourself, right? That's a problem. However, they don't want to see it that way. So they don't compare it. So that's why that argument that most of us with common sense make doesn't land with people who are ideologically captured. And
So
yeah,
go ahead.
so that's how they see it. They If you look into queer theory is really about turning everything normal abnormal. So that's their
Up is
goal.
down and down is up and right is left, and
Exactly.
it's complete chaos.
Yeah, and I've been to some trainings where they even so there's the DSM, which is the manual that psychologists use to look up diagnosis. So gender dysphoria is in there. It used to be called gender identity disorder, but they
Yep.
changed that because that's too stigmatizing. They don't like the word disorder. And that's really when the can of worms opened. So that was 2014. So they want it both ways. They want to have it in the DSM so that insurance will cover it, but they don't want it to be considered a disorder.
And there's the rub. There's the
Mm-hmm.
rub. So I want to drill down a little bit further because it's sort of the foundation of this. At root, what do you believe, Pamela, is the genesis for today's gender confusion?
At root. Well, I mean, I think this is a symptom of, the emptiness within our culture. And I think it's people searching for something, searching for
For
meaning,
purpose,
searching for
right? Meaning,
belonging,
yeah.
searching for connection. I People, when I speak about this issue, I don't really criticize the transgender people because I see them as victims too. I see them as victims of an ideology, and it comes from usually some kind of pain or emptiness. Perhaps they would do better with a church, something that gives them purpose and meaning and connection. It's a lot of people with attachment issues. That's why foster kids are so easily manipulated to believe they're trans. So that's what it is. It's our culture fracturing, the breakdown of families, all of that. So I think it's a symptom of our culture struggling.
Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask Pamela why the cultural left seems to celebrate and promote this gender ideology. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us. Folks, are you tired of big corporations controlling what you buy? Switch to a true American company making safer, healthier products right here in the USA. With over 450 high quality products that we use and run out of every day, all made with American pride. Enjoy 100% USDA prime and high choice pasture raised beef. No hormones, no antibiotics, just pure, delicious flavor. Support American jobs with a company that shares your values. Join over 2 million Patriot families that have already made the switch at switch2usamade.store. Don't wait. Join the movement today. That's switch2usamade.store. And we're back. Pamela, I wanted to ask you what I think is a very important question, and that is, why do you think this gender confusion or this gender ideology, maybe even, is being celebrated and promoted to the extent that it is by the cultural left?
Well, I think there are different types of people who are celebrating it. I believe there are some people who are quite nefarious and they know that this is evil. They're profiting off this, they're getting power out of this. I believe the people in the Biden administration, like Admiral Rachel Levine, who convinced WPATH to lower the standards and the age of consent for children to get transgender surgeries. I don't believe Rachel Levine is just doing this out of kindness. I think there's a power behind it. However, in general, I think most people don't realize. I think they've been bamboozled. I think they've been manipulated. I think that their empathy has been hijacked and weaponized to believe that this is the kind thing to do. And then there's a lot of the population that just is uncomfortable with it and doesn't know what to do or doesn't know what to say. So they just bow out of the conversation and just say, oh, you do you, right? Kind of a libertarian mentality. And so unfortunately, people have gotten hurt in the process and they don't realize what's going on. They don't realize how harmful it is.
And that you do you mentality, is what has led to, dare I say, some people showing up to school and wanting to use a litter box in the men's or women's restrooms. So I agree with you. I think we need to be more in tune with what's going on here, and perhaps more importantly, how do we solve the problem? And I think that your book adequately addresses that. If someone were to come in and tell you today, hey, I'm struggling with this gender identity. I'm a boy who believes I'm a girl. How would you approach that? What would you say to them? How might it look?
Well, I honestly, if I were there, it depends on what role I have with that person, right? It depends on how close I am. Uh, as their therapist, I wouldn't confront it right away, meaning I would never affirm, I would never say, yes, you're a boy, or yes, you're trans, but I wouldn't go right at it initially. I wouldn't bark at them and say, no, you need to face reality, because you have to understand this is someone who's been programmed, that's been basically brainwashed by a cult. And as soon as you just say, this is wrong and you're wrong, then they don't, you're sending them right into the arms of these people who
Who
have, like I
embrace
said, these
them?
nefarious agendas. So what I would do, especially with a kid, I would join with them. I would try to gain their trust and talk to them like a human being, notice them, what they're dealing with, and just talk to them and connect with them. And usually it doesn't take that long to find out what is really going on for them, what is missing for them, or what they're struggling with, and then I would address those things. And then eventually, you if especially if it becomes a topic of conversation, you can ask questions, but ask them open ended and have them kind of land in the paint themselves in their own corner, right? You ask them, well, what does it mean to be trans? And you just ask them like you really want to understand and you're curious, instead of confronting them and telling them that they're stupid for it, or that they're living a delusion, or not all those words. That doesn't work when someone's really in the thick of it. And then maybe also, if they're not so far in, you could reach them by being more blunt. So a lot of it has to depend on the individual, how long they've been in it, and what your relationship is with that person.
So, where can our viewers go if they want to learn more about you and if they want to buy this book? I know you've got another book that's about to be released in the coming days.
Yeah, I have a children's book that's coming. It's coming out in the spring, so I'd say in May 2025. It's called Froggy Girl, and it's a kind of an inoculation book. It's a book about a little girl who wishes she was a frog, but she learns that she can't be a
Can't
frog,
be a
and she
frog.
because she can't do froggy things. And then she meets a wise turtle that helps her learn that it's special to be a little girl, and it rhymes. And so that's for parents of young children. And even I actually read it to detransitioners. Those are young adults who have once believed they were trans and even were harmed by the gender industry, and they all like loved it. That was a really special moment. So even young adults, I think, would appreciate it, even though it's a children's book. That's called Froggy Girl, and that's coming out in May. So FroggyGirlBook.com is its website, and it's just coming soon at the moment, so not available yet. But the main book that's got a lot of information that can help parents and clinicians and teachers and coaches, or any adult that wants to know what the heck is going on, to understand this, and then how to approach teens, and has a whole host of resources. It's called A Practical Response to Gender Distress, Tips and Tools for Families, and that is available on Amazon.
A
And
practical response for gender distress.
yes, to gender distress.
To
Yes.
gender distress.
I know
I
it's a
apologize.
mouthful. I should have named it a catchier title. It's easier to
So,
remember.
what kind of backlash or resistance have you faced for the position on this hot subject that you've taken?
Because I was canceled already, my story is I actually was on disability and came back and worked part-time for a bit. And because I was in California, I was fired for not getting the COVID vaccine. And so I was already kind of ousted. So that's why I became public with this. I mean, I get a lot of, I get a lot of comments. I'm on this terrible website. It's called Transgender Map, and it's actually a great resource for people, because it has all the people who are outspoken against it, which the website says we're all evil and transphobic. But if you can see right through it, it's actually a great resource list for all the people that have been publicly saying that this is harmful to children and adults. And so I'm on that. It'd be hard for me to get a mainstream job nowadays. And a lot of the people that I used to work with, especially in San Francisco, they
You
obviously
worked
don't
in
talk to me
San
anymore.
Francisco?
Yes.
Wow.
I worked at UCSF, and I also worked at an aging center called Institute of Aging. So I worked with San Francisco people. Yeah, that's where I
You're
came from,
brave. You
the
are a
Bay Area of
brave woman.
California. But so there are a lot of people I don't talk to anymore. So in a way, I've already lost those friends because I was on disability, And I didn't go along with the COVID narrative. So it's
Neither
just,
did I,
so many
incidentally.
rounds of being canceled. You're canceled. It doesn't matter. I've I have not lost my license. I've never even got a threat on my license. A lot of people are concerned about
Good.
that. I In order for you really to get a threat on your license, it has to be an active client as opposed to someone who's just responding to you on social media. I've gotten a few threatening emails, but they're all empty threats. So in a way, I had more to gain because I knew I was doing the right thing, and it felt better to be true to myself and to be speaking the truth. I'm known as the truthful therapist publicly. People know me that way because I just speak the truth. I'm like the little kid pointing at the emperor and the emperor's new clothes. Like, this is just harmful, and this is not real, and this isn't mental health, and a lot of things you even just said in this interview. So I've gained a lot of respect and following, to push against the narrative. A lot of people agree with me. They're in a position where it's difficult for them to speak out because they have to keep their jobs or support their family. I get some disability, so I'm okay. I can speak out, so it's okay.
Our country and the world would be better with more therapists like you, Pamela. I appreciate what you're doing and the stand that you've taken on this. The sane lane is what I like to call it. So thank you for coming on tonight. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas. Stay dialed in to interviews and content just like this by clicking that follow button on my Facebook page, or hit the subscribe button to learn more about exclusive access that you won't want to miss.